Hello everyone, this is FIDE Master Viktor Neustroev. Today we start in time and yes, it's 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and today I'm going to conduct a workshop where I'm going, which I decided to devote to a stalemate. You will learn more about stalemate, how to achieve it, which pieces to sacrifice, and of course, if you are a winner, if you are a winning side, how to avoid a stalemate. Please let me know if the sound and video quality is good. By the end of this workshop, I'm going to conduct a quiz, and the winner of this quiz will be able to claim a 1-hour chess lesson with a FIDE Master from our school, chesslance.com. So I'm streaming this workshop on several platforms. I will be pay attention to Twitch, of course, and the one that is on our website, chesslance.com. Okay, guys, please let me know if the sound is good. And another thing I wanted to know is, do you follow Chess Olympiad? Okay, I see Barry Phillips is already here. So I kindly ask you guys to tell me if the sound is good, video should be okay. And actually in a few minutes we are about to start. First of all, if speaking about Chess Olympiad, what do you think? Who will be the winner? In my opinion, the United States, of course. So there is no Russia, no China. That's why I believe they are favorites. Maybe India as well, but I still believe that United States will be the winners. Today is only round 3, so they have a lot of time to change everything. According to what I see, there are a lot of teams who won both games. Including the United States, of course. Okay. Yes, and yeah, I think this is the strongest team. However, there are also two other favorites. It's India and Ukraine. Ukraine is traditionally one of the strongest teams. So, and of course India. This is the country where chess were invented, and now they still have a lot of players who can you see, even Visha Anand is not participating in the game because maybe he is not in the best condition. He actually got retired, and I absolutely understand it, but maybe for Chess Olympiad he could join back. Okay, let's start with our workshop. So what about what is a stalemate? You probably know what stalemate means. This is a, well, if you, just a sec, if you received my emails, you know, and actually if you are a chess player, you know the rules. It's such a situation where you where your king is not under check and you have no other legal moves. So for example, this is the first position we are going to discuss. If we look at this position, black has 2 queens, so white cannot checkmate this king. Something like that doesn't work, they just escape. So the only thing white can do is to fight for a draw. How to fight for a draw? Stalemate, of course, or perpetual check is another option, but stalemate in this case. And first of all, you should understand which legal moves you have. The queen has a lot of legal moves, so what means that white should get rid of this queen. And the king has only one legal move, it's this. Somehow we should force one of the enemy queens to control this a4 square. And well, it can be queen b5, you may say. But after queen b5, if they take, it's a stalemate, that's right. But if not, then how to continue? Deliver another check. So every time you decide to sacrifice the queen in order to get a stalemate, you should realize what happens in case if they don't accept this sacrifice, but for example play something else. For example, in this position, queen d1 leads to a checkmate because the king has no squares to escape. The only legal move is to take this queen, and now the king cannot go to a4. This is a stalemate. Yeah, thank you for your suggestion. It's queen d1. Okay, let's continue with the next position, which I'm sure you'll find quite simple. The logic is pretty much the same. So what do you think, guys? Queen d4? Or what? Well, queen d4, queen takes queen, and the king can now move to f1. Here you should definitely notice that pawns are immobilized. They cannot move. The king can only move to f1, and the queen has a lot of squares to move, so the queen should be sacrificed, and white should also eliminate their option to move the king to f1. And the answer comes just in seconds if you know what to look for. Queen d3, if they don't take, for example, the king goes away, you can capture their enemy queen and win the game. And if they take, it's a stalemate. So you see, the king cannot go to f1. Okay, we are going to continue with such simple examples, and then I'm going to demonstrate something more complicated. This is actually the exact case where I'm going to explain the technique of how to get stalemated. After that, I'm going to demonstrate the games played by masters and grandmasters where stalemate was achieved. You may say that these are quite rare cases, but no, it happens even in top players' games. Of course, it happens a lot among beginners, among club players, and especially in blitz games. But sometimes it happens even in top grandmasters games. So please think about this position and tell me what you should do. It's black to move. Okay, let me, while you are thinking, let me explain the strategy. What you should do, what is your order of actions to get stalemated. Here Alex suggests, for example, knight to d2, but knight d2, rook h7 mate. So here you see, first of all, you should realize what your opponent is threatening. And they're threatening with a mate, this or that. And I don't really see a good defense against it. Maybe rook h8, but rook h8 means you have to play this passive position, and they will definitely find how to gain the material. For example, if you play this move rook e7 and they take the advantage of the pin. Yes, you can unpin then, but if you move the knight away from e4, you lose the pawn on f6. For example, rook h8, rook e7, let's say queen c1 in order to unpin. King goes to h2, let's say knight is now hanging and has to move, let's say there, but queen f6 this time is a checkmate. Okay, so there is a good comment by Ritkiman Barma to sacrifice. Well, and what about the knight? The knight is still alive. Okay, so the algorithm is like that. So first get rid of almost all of your pieces except your queen or rooks, or the pieces that are pinned. So you should only leave the pieces that you can sacrifice quickly with a tempo, with checks or something like that. Make sure all your pawns are blocked and can move. Sometimes the pawns can be pinned as well. In this exact position both pawns are blocked. But if you provoke the enemy bishop or the enemy queen to move, then the pawn can move and it won't be a stalemate. Okay, make sure your king has no legal moves. This is the case. The king has no legal moves. So, and now you should sacrifice. You should sacrifice pieces. The king has no moves, pawns are blocked, let's sacrifice pieces. So if speaking about this concrete position, you should get rid of these two. Which of them sacrifice first? Usually you sacrifice less valuable pieces and leave the queen last. But sometimes there are some exclusions. For example, here you cannot sacrifice the knight with a check. Okay, extra fun rocks suggest a good combination, but actually it's a kind of a mistake. It is a mistake because when you play with your, well, every time the queen goes here, bishop goes to d1, either to take the queen or to block this check. And after the bishop goes to d1, the g-pawn can move, and the concept of getting a stalemate ruins. That's why here the move order should be slightly different. While there is no moves with the knight that deliver a check, the first option is rook b1. Rook b1, king has to move to h2. You see? This time it doesn't make sense to block with the bishop. Oh, let's if they block with the bishop, then queen takes, king h2 and queen h1 is a checkmate, of course. So rook b1, they can only move the king to h2. Then you sacrifice the rook on h1. That was correct. So several people suggested this idea in their lines. And then you continue with knight g3, because the king is on h1, and while the king is there, you may sacrifice your knight with a check. So knight was such a piece that can be hardly sacrificed with a check, and while the king is on h1, let's take the advantage of this opportunity. This is actually a fork, and if they ignore and don't accept this sacrifice, we take the queen and play for a win. That's why they are most likely to take. Now the queen left. We cannot exchange queens. Then the g-pawn will be available, will get some legal moves. We should sacrifice the queen. Every time we push our queen to the first rank, they block with the bishop. This is what we should avoid. But because of the f-pawn left its position and is now on g3, we can sacrifice the queen on g2, and they have to take it. And then this is a stalemate. Let me show you. So first you sacrifice less valuable pieces, but you cannot sacrifice the knight with a check, so that's why rook goes first. King h2, you see? So king h2 has to be played, because of this move you take with the queen and deliver a checkmate on h1. So rook b1, king goes to h2. Rook h1. He has no other option but to accept this sacrifice. Now knight g3, not f2, g3. And here there was a good comment. Well, actually no. Here, if they do not accept the sacrifice, you take the queen and play for a win. That's why they have to take. The last thing is to sacrifice the queen, and it's actually usually easy because queen has a lot of options to move. And queen takes on g2. This is a check. They have to take, and then you see neither the king nor these pawns have any legal moves. So this is a stalemate. Did you understand the concept? Or the algorithm of how to sacrifice pieces? Oh, I hope everything clear and we can continue with the next game. This is actually a simple position that I actually wanted to include into a quiz, but then found something complicated. So by the end of the webinar, well, maybe last 10 minutes, I'll provide you with 5 different positions where your task will be to suggest the solutions, and so a person who suggests more proper lines will get a 1-hour class with one of our FIDE masters. Okay, so this position, white to move, yeah, this one is simple. Here you see the king has no legal moves. It's stalemated. Only the rook can move. That's why you should be looking for moves with this rook. At the same time, you understand that their next move is rook a1, which is a checkmate. So that's why you should make such a move which doesn't allow them to checkmate on a1. And this move is rook a8, of course. So rook a1 cannot be played. Moving the rook to a different place is possible, but If that happens, you deliver a check on a3, chasing the king away, and then promote. There is no checkmate. Let me show you. There is no checkmate on the first rank in this case, because you take the pawn on f2, because before that you chase the king away. So rook e8 is the first move. They have to accept it, otherwise white wins. And now h8 equals queen, and rook a1 is still unavailable. So not h8 equals rook, but h8 equals queen, because if you promote to a rook, they deliver a checkmate on a1. But here with the queen you control it. So black has no other option but to take, otherwise white will be playing for a win. And then only the king left with no legal moves. Okay, fine. I actually found, I found a lot, but chose only 5 games where stalemate happened. The first game is the game between Larry Melvin Evans and Samuel Richevsky. Some people say this is the most famous game that ended with a stalemate. Usually, when the game ends with a stalemate, it contains a lot of moves, and this game is not an exclusion, and not an exception. So we are not going to analyze it. We are going to analyze only the final combination, or maybe some critical points of the game. So white is better. Not much, but finally this tactical strike was applied, and then here you see this knight cannot be taken, the rook is hanging. And after that it's approximately equal. And then black starts outplaying white. Finally, they initiated the kingside attack. White decided to attack the queen side, and black focused on the kingside attack, which was a right decision. In this position, they played bishop b5. What is a mistake? Well, probably they thought that after a takes b5, they can just take on d7, but I don't believe it's a good idea. Even if that happens, rook e1, rook e2 with a strong attack. So bishop b5, queen g5, intermediate move g3, a takes b5, rook d7, rook e1, almost like what I said, and rook f7, rook e3. White continues with h4, chasing the queen away, rook e2, an intermediate check, king goes to h1, and in this position, what would you do if you were black actually? Could you please tell me? Okay, so Larry suggests if I was black, I would probably go queen g6. Well, that makes sense. Queen should go to g6. So you see, sometimes I'm looking up because my second monitor is located in front of me. Okay, fine. So yes, queen g6 is the best option, and this move should be played, of course. Then what? They cannot take anyway, so the rook is hanging. Probably the game could continue like that. Queen e6, threatening with a mate actually. Rook h8, maybe king g6, and I believe in this position white has to exchange queens and lose the game because they are down the material. In the game it was queen g3, and after that Well, this is a blunder, yes, and after that white was able to apply tactical combination and end up with a stalemate. Could you please tell me this tactical combination? What would you do if you were white? Yeah, you may need some time to think, of course. I'm just checking if there are any comments. Oh. Okay. So queen h8, queen h8, I see your comments. Okay, so queen h8. Well, if here they play king g6, queen g7 is a mate, of course. So they have to accept it. Then rook f8, king goes there, then this, king escapes, then this move. And with rook f6 you can keep checking. Almost the same thing happened in the game, actually. So queen h8 was correct, but Larry Evans played even better. He played queen g8. If king h6 in this position, it's a checkmate in 2, of course. So king takes g8. So queen g8, king takes g7, and then rook g7. This is a little bit stronger because requires less calculations from us, from white. Now, doesn't really matter who takes, it's a stalemate. If the king goes away, or maybe it goes there, we continue checking with rook on the 7th rank. So this tactical motive is called desperado, like a wild rook that keeps checking the king, doesn't really matter where it goes. Here it's just simple. The rook stays stays on the 7th rank and keeps checking the king. So, and when they accept it, it's a stalemate, of course. Doesn't really matter where the queen is. I mean, for example, in this case, if queen takes g7, it's still a stalemate because the queen controls g1 square and these two squares are controlled with the rook. Okay, fine. The next example is the game between Anatoly Karpov and Garry Kasparov. We are not going to analyze the game, but finally they played this endgame with 3 minor pieces versus a rook, which is slightly better for white, but there is no clear victory. And Garry Kasparov, who is actually black, let's actually flip the board, Garry Kasparov, who is black, wants to sacrifice his rook for the bishop. In such a case, he gets a theoretical draw because two knights cannot checkmate the king. And then finally they came to this position where it's black to move. What would you suggest if you were black in this position? So guys, okay, so rook a6 is your suggestion, and yes, you're absolutely right. This is what Garry played. Rook a6, and yeah, rook a6. Let me play it on the board. Then it was king to f7. But if it was king to e5, well, for some reason I can't make this move. Okay, let me do something. So if, let's say, king e5 here, for some reason Lichess doesn't allow me to make a move. Wow. Okay, let me set up the position. Okay, finally I was able to do it. So here, if rook a6 is played, they can move the king to e5, to e7, or block with the knight, but not with the bishop. If they block with the bishop, it's just rook takes e6. In the game, they played king f7, and this is where Garry Kasparov played rook f6, sacrificing the rook, because if king takes, this is a stalemate. If the king doesn't take, it's, let's say the king moves somewhere away, it's rook f5. Garry could sacrifice the rook and end up with the king versus two knights, and that should be a draw. If, let's say, king e5, then king gets the g7 square in this case. The most strong move here was knight e6, but it's still fine. For example, he could continue with rook a1 back and then try to pin and sacrifice his rook on f5. The game could continue. Okay, fine. The next game is the game between Karl Schlechter and David Yanovsky. Well, we of course are not going to to analyze the whole game. Let's just talk about the end game. So they finally reached this position. Black is better and playing for a win, but not everything is clear. Here, if for example rook a7, rook takes f4, g takes h3, and rook g4, what then? If for example king f7, it's king h2 and the h3 pawn is lost, after which it should be a draw. King h5 was played instead. Rook g3, king h4. What would you do in this position in order to save it? What's your opinion? Because if you decide to play king h2, rook a2, and you lose your rook, and there is no stalemate, of course. Okay, guys, yeah, I see your comments on Twitch and or your comments on YouTube channel of the chessworld.com. So this is what you can actually so you can keep posting on at chesslance.com masterclass video. So I see your comments, it's fine, and I kindly recommend you to stay to the very end, because there will be a quiz and you may gain a prize, which is a 1 hour class with one of our coaches. And there is also something else I prepared for you actually. Okay, so now I'm sure you may see my screen, and this is our school's website. Here you can always schedule a free chess lesson. It's a 20 minutes class where you can let's say you click here, you can choose a coach you want to work with, and you can ask your coach about anything. So like, what should I do to get better in chess? What do you recommend me? What openings do you recommend me? Oh, well, what else? You can let's analyze the game, or let's play the games, and this is what you can do for free. But actually it's limited to 20 minutes. You can also click book your lesson, for example, book your lesson, and choose the coach that you want. For example, let's say FIDE master Nikolai Yordanov, who recently conducted the webinar, and choose the timing. So he has only 3 these days, next week. For example, who else? Julian Nieta is international master from Mexico. His English is perfect, so you see, you can almost book anytime. International master Barliub Zlatanovich. So still a lot of options. FIDE master Armin Musovic, and so yeah, just a few options here left. They are quite busy now. Well, who else? Even Grandmaster Sergei Zablotsky. Yeah, currently he is participating in the tournament. That's why there are no, yeah, only starting from August 16 there are a few options. He will be back, and then he will be able to continue our classes. Okay, so this is the list of coaches, and we are going to add another strong international master soon. So, for example, this guy, international master Mauricio Santana, is participating in Olympiad. That's why you cannot book a class with him right now. He is playing for Costa Rica team. And these guys are available. Okay, fine. Let's continue. So rook b3 may be one of the solutions. Well, if you play rook b3, the game is likely to continue with this move, then this, then this. Maybe actually, no, g5 is a good move. So what then? Keep your rook there. g4. If g3, of course, you check, but they can deliver a check. King goes there and then play g3, because if you take it, it's another check. King has to move and the rook is lost. So rook b3 doesn't work. Yeah, rook g6 is the best move. Rook g6. In the game it was played rook a1, king h2, rook a2. King is now cut off. And finally, well, g7 is hanging. They have either to retreat back, after which you can just repeat the position, or they have to play rook g2, which they actually did. Their idea of this move was to win after this exchange. So here white has to leave a position and black promotes. For example, king f2, king h3, and if king f3, just the pawn goes. If king goes there, it's g5, king h1, g4, king g1, king g3. So again, white loses their position. For example, here, 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 and that's it. So that's why here white decided to use their last chance, and that move was rook to h6, sacrificing the rook. The king is stalemated. That's why you can sacrifice the rook. G takes h6, and the game ended in a draw. If the king moves, let's say the king moves there, it's rook h3, king has to take, well, or maybe the king can go there, but it's still a draw, because this pawn on g7 can be easily stopped. You know that when the king stands in front of the pawn, the h, g, a and b pawns cannot be promoted. If speaking about the other pawns, it depends on the concrete position. So rook h6, if king g4, it can be still rook h3 with the same idea. Against one pawn with rooks on the board, white is able to draw the game. Okay, the next example is the game between Klaus Wockenfass and Ulf Andersson. So they finally played this in game where white was winning. So let's flip the board. Here white was winning. Maybe not actually much, but rook f5, king d4, and well, let's start from the very beginning. So first of all, it looks like a draw, but no pieces except the moves with the only piece that can play. Just sacrifice that piece and make sure you don't leave more opportunities for your other pieces. Because, for example, if you continue with rook c3, you sacrifice the rook, but the b pawn can move. So that is unlikely to work. The last example, after which we are going to continue with a quiz, is actually an interesting game. It's the game between Vishy Anand and Alexei Dreyev. And Vishy was outplayed, but finally was able to save the game with a stalemate. So let's start from this position. h3 in order to expose the king. g3 was played. c5. d5, it takes d5, c takes c4. So the pawn on d5 is hanging. Black is clearly better. Knight c3 in order to protect it. Queen c5, adding more pressure and attacking the rook as well. Rook a2. Knight e7 with the idea to take with the knight. Rook a b2. Finally, knight takes d5, rook b5. And this is where black decides to take on c3, because if this queen is taken, then knight b1, and the white queen is hanging. A white queen moves, but the rook is lost. So finally, black got 2 rooks and the bishop. Of course, you may say, what about this move? Well, if this move, then the c pawn plays the most significant role and can be promoted. That's why here knight d4. It's not a sacrifice, of course. And I doubt that something like that can be played. Probably queen b7 then, or maybe knight f5, knight f5. King g6 to protect on f5. Queen b7, bishop d4, queen b6, attacking the knight. But who cares? It's f6 and let them capture the knight. c3. So you see, he is trying to create a stalemate. This piece can't move. The king has only 1 square. Bishop d3. c2, sacrificing it. Rook c2 and rook h c8. Quite a logical idea with the intention to play rook c1 and gain the queen. But bishop f5, rook takes f5, and g4, taking the advantage of the spin. Well, of course, maybe something like that could be played, but then bishop c8. So it's not enough material. Anyway, rook c1, queen has to take, then rook takes f2. Look at the position. King goes to h1 to avoid the discovered attack. And if the rook moves, the king would have no squares. Bishop f5 attacking here, the king now can move to g1 back. But queen g1 protecting here. Rook g2. And this is where I want to ask you, what would you do if you were white? Let's forget that our goal is to get a stalemate, but how would you draw the game with a stalemate or in a different way? For example, if you exchange everything but leave these 2 pieces, the bishop and the h3 pawn, the king on h1 can successfully stop it. So how would you play here as white? So queen b1, let's say king to g7, and in case of queen b7, it's king to h6 and no more checks, and then you lose on h2, so the pawn is gonna be so dangerous. No. Okay, any other ideas? Okay, guys? So, queen takes rook? No, queen takes rook is not enough. For example, queen takes rook, take there, and then what? Let's say, well, because it's the f pawn, it can be promoted. Let's say this, h3. King h4, maybe f4. Then the task is just to get to force this king to move. Well, actually, no. Let's play bishop c7 in order to stop the pawn. And what's then? King f3, king h4 goes there. Okay. Let me play this move. Then king h3 in order to not lose. Then this, king goes there, and then this. So finally they have to sacrifice one of these two pawns. And when they sacrifice the pawn on a5, they then lose the pawn on h3, for example, like that. And then the g4 pawn, and black promotes. Okay, so here the answer is a5. So can you imagine it? Vishy was okay to sacrifice his queen. Here, how to play? Well, of course, something like that doesn't work. For example, king g5, this. And in order to stop the pawn, they have to play bishop d4. But then king h1, and, well, what's then? a7 is played, and after bishop h7, it's a stalemate. That's why king g7 was played. a6, bishop b8 to stop it. King h1. So you see, the king has, after bishop a7, the king would have no legal moves. King g8, king g1, king f8. So they repeated the position, and finally g5 was played. There, g6, f4, g7. So they have to stop this pawn, otherwise white promotes to a queen. g8, king g8, and finally a7. Here the bishop has to take. If f3, it's just a takes b8 equals queen, and white is winning. So f3 cannot be played, instead bishop a7, and this is a stalemate. So you see, Vishy calculated this line to the very end when he decided to sacrifice the queen and played a5 move, because then he forced the king to go to h1, and this bishop has to control this diagonal in order to prevent the a pawn from promotion. This is how a stalemate can be achieved. Okay, guys. So are you ready for a quiz? So I will be waiting your comments here at chesslance.com or on Twitch or YouTube. So these are 3 resources I am reading at the moment, and so I accept only, okay, let's say I give 2 minutes, maybe, okay, I'll give 2 minutes for the first position, and your task is to suggest a line with no mistakes. In such a case, your answer will be correct. So this is the first position. It's black to move, and I give you 2 minutes for this position to find how black makes a draw. It can be a stalemate, or it can be something else, but it should be a draw. Okay, timer starts. What do you think black should do in order to achieve a draw? Okay, how much time? We have 40 seconds left. Okay. Okay, so we see I have only one answer, and this answer is correct. So it's queen g8. They have to the pawn is pinned, so they have to play something in order to, oh, well, maybe queen b5 in order to push the pawn. Not king f3, of course, but, well, it doesn't matter which move they play. Black sacrifices the queen for that pawn. If white does something else, then it's still a draw. So queen e8, for example, queen g8, they exchange now. Sorry. And the king stays in the corner, so white is unable to take any of the pawns. And if this queen is taken, the king is stalemated. Okay, so my congratulations to Extra Fun Rocks. That was correct. Let's continue with the next one. And here the question is, how white draws the game in case if black plays rook takes h7. So your task is to draw the game with white pieces. Time starts. Okay, actually, there was also a correct answer by Wenli Huang about the first position. So now I'm checking all the comments. Okay, time is over, so let's check the answers. So here, yes, it's correct. Chiranjeeb, Barry Phillips, and Extra Fun Rocks are correct, as well as Wenli Huang and Samuel Gu, or Gu. So the answer is rook takes f7, threatening with a mate. Well, they doesn't really matter what they do. They probably have to take, otherwise you checkmate or you gain a rook. So probably they take, doesn't really matter with which rook, and then you play b5. They can play anything, but white has no legal moves. Correct. Position number 3, where it's white to move. 2 minutes started. Here you draw the game either with a perpetual check or stalemate. Let me make some notes. So 30 seconds left. Well, maybe it's a long combination, that's why there are no answers. Okay, guys, any suggestions? No? Let me give you 1 minute more. Oh, Chiranjip, if you suggest Queen F8, please continue the line, because it may be even a long line. Okay. So, no ideas except, well, Queen F7, Queen F8 are just the ideas. I can't accept them as answers because they do not immediately lead to a stalemate. But let's, well, okay, nobody suggested the line, so let me explain. So first of all, this doesn't make sense. After rook takes f7, at least the f pawn, the g pawn can move. It doesn't work. Queen f8. So extra fun rocks was closer. But it's not I cannot accept this answer anyway. So Queen f8 is a correct move, but the line, let's talk about the line. So if the king goes here, it's a checkmate, of course. We shouldn't analyze it at all. King f6, of course. Queen goes to h8. That was correct. If king g7, it's just a repetition like that. Queen f8, queen h8. That's why king goes to f5, and this is where g4. That's right. This is how we get rid of the pawn. What moves do they have? So first of all, if they move with the king to f4, at least we can what we can do? We can checkmate actually with queen f6, king e4, and rook d4. If the king goes to e4, we can checkmate directly with this move. Well, actually, with after king f4, we can still play rook d4, which is with a checkmate. So they have to take it. Then, you see, we have the king is stalemated, this pawn is immobilized, rook and queen left. So we sacrifice the less valuable, which is a rook. What happens then? If they play king to e4, it's a checkmate with queen e5. Same thing happens in case of king f4. So they have to take this rook. And after that, here the most important move in this position is queen c8. This is a double attack. Another important feature of this position is that after king f4, queen c1, queen takes c1 is a check. Because if it wasn't a check, rook h3 would lead to a checkmate. But because it's a check, white is likely to win this game. That's why here after this check they have to take our queen, and then this is a stalemate. So long combination. So we still have two leaders, Wenli Huang with two correct answers, and Extra Fun Rocks also with two answers. Samuel Gu, Barry Phillips, and Chiranjeep only one correct answer. Let's continue with position number 4. It's white to move. The task is to draw the game, and this time I give you 3 minutes. Okay, so waiting for your answers. 1 minute left. So I see the answer of John and Extra Fun Rocks. Okay, who else? Okay, Wenli, one move is not enough. Please suggest a line. Okay, so let me show you. Okay, fine. So let me show the solution here. Well, first of all, d6 and this pawn should be taken right away. Otherwise, it's either d7 or d takes d7 and the pawn is promoted. E takes d6 and king d3. You're absolutely right about this move. What happens then? Then you successfully stop the pawns and you're about to promote this pawn. Only the bishop can stop this pawn, and the only way with the bishop to stop it is to take on g3 and then continue with d5 in order to stop the pawn. a6, and finally they play this move. You see, with d pawn and with d5 pawn the king cannot move there. So you play a7, you provoke them to take with the bishop, so they protect the pawn on d4, and the king has no squares to move to. Okay, so okay, I give 1 point for Wenli Huang, Extra Fun Rocks, and John Wogan. Okay, fine. Let's continue. This is the last one. This is the last position where white makes a draw. I can give you 4 minutes for this. Yeah, 4 minutes for this last position. Time starts. How white should stalemate themselves? So it's white to move. They should get a stalemate, or they can draw the game in a different way. Okay, so waiting for your answers. Any suggestions? Well, it's hard to find, of course. Even the engine doesn't see it first. So Barry, you are looking how to draw the game with white pieces here. If black plays h2 in this position, they win, of course, but it's white to move. Okay, I'll give you 1 extra minute. Maybe this one is too complicated. Okay. Yeah, time is over. So, any suggestions? Okay, I'll give you a hint. Because we need to find a winner, I'll give you a hint. The first move is knight g3, of course. Well, here, for example, playing h2 doesn't make sense. In such a case, it's knight to h1. King has to take and bishop f4. So you sacrifice the bishop for that pawn and promote the a pawn faster than your opponent. Well, let me just show you. Bishop h2, king h2, a5, h3, a6, b takes a6, king takes a6, king g2, b7, h2, b8 equals queen, h1 equals queen, queen takes d6, for example, and in case of this move, you continue with queen a3 and play for a win. At least white has a draw, but they are playing for a win in this position. So knight g3, they have to take this knight. And your next move is bishop d2. Then black may continue with h2 or g2, doesn't really matter. How to play them? I give you 1 minute, please suggest the answer after h2. Okay, the time is over. Well, yeah, let me check the answers, and the only answer which is actually a correct answer is about the cage. Yes, it's bishop a5 and b4 in order to block all the pawns. Bishop a5, well, what they can do? They can only move the king or promote. b4, and nobody can reach the king in one move. So queen f1 doesn't work. The king has no legal moves, the pawn has no legal moves. Black plays something, but it's a stalemate. So today's winner is Extra Fun Rocks with 4 or 5. You can message me at school@chesslands.com and claim your prize. Okay, once again, guys, just one more thing I wanted to you to learn. So we talked about how to get stalemated, but we didn't talk about how to avoid a stalemate. There is only one rule. Give your opponent enough room to move and make sure they cannot sacrifice all their pieces in a forced way. So I mean with checks or with some threats. Okay. So let me close it. There is something I would like to share with you as well. So please look at the screen. Now you can see my screen, and there is a course I recently created about how to find tactical strikes. How to find stalemate. This course covers the position that we didn't analyze, and they are divided into different levels. So simple combinations, medium difficulty combination, advanced, complex, and finally the example of the games. And you can get this course for free. It's quite a short course, about how many, maybe 1 hour, even maybe less than 1 hour. So you can get this course if only you click on the link that I'll provide you in the chat just in a few seconds. I also want you to understand that you get to Skillshare.com platform, and they may ask you to get a subscription. You may or you may not get it. If you want just this course, it's fine. You can watch it just using my link. If you are looking for some other courses on their platforms, doesn't matter if they are related to chess or not, you should get this subscription. But for this course you don't need, if only you use my special link. And another thing I want you to remember, first of all, you remember we talked about this guy Mauricio Santana. He is playing for Costa Rica team. On the first board, he is the best chess player from Costa Rica. In the first game he won, the second he lost to Grandmaster Peralta Fernandez, and the third game he is playing. So now I kindly recommend you to book classes with our coaches. You can either order a free class, a 20 minutes class. For example, here below, if you click on this link, you can book a class with international master Borolyub Zlatanovic. If you want to choose another coach, just go to the main page, click schedule your free chess lesson, choose the coach, and book a free class. If you decided to work on chess and have regular classes, we have some discounts. You can just go here, book your lesson and choose a coach, or you can go to bundles and pay for 4, 8 or 16 classes, and then book your class with the student. In such a case, you get a discount of $2 or $4 per class. Okay, so that was FIDE Master Viktor Neustroev, and the webinar that was devoted to stalemate, how to avoid it. I'm sure you enjoyed it. So there will be no event next Sunday, but there will be the Sunday after that. So please stay at chesslands.com and I'm sure you will enjoy chess and also improve your chess performance. So wait for the link. I'll share it in just a sec. So I'll share it everywhere. Here. And here. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you for your attention and